guys, it's Val here, and sorry for taking a while to get on this, but I hope you guys are having a Merry Christmas, and we are finally concluding What If Tom Holland was in the Ramiverse Part 5, so let us begin. So we start off with Peter and Venom, just hanging out, stopping crime, going out with MJ, and here, in the first act, we have Peter also catching up with Harry, because, Harry's been doing good, he's got his, Harry has, went off to college, he's gotten better by the day since his dad passed away. And funny thing is, Harry is actually working on a Goblin Serum that Peter wants to, that Harry wants to try out, right? So, Harry pitches the idea to Peter and say, hey, do you think I should try this? And Peter would say, I don't know, Harry, but go for it. And then Harry would then inject it into himself, and then Harry wouldn't, freak out or anything. He would actually transform into, the Goblin, but in a good way. He's not going to be, the villain in this universe. And Venom is freaking out, saying, "Holy so Peter, what the heck is that? What the heck is happening?" And Venom's just like, Peter's like, "Calm down, Venom. It's just my friend Harry." So Harry actually becomes the Hobgoblin in this universe. And, he would actually, Harry would ask, "Hey, Peter, is it okay if you and me go stop crime together?" And Peter was like, "You know what? That's a good idea." So now you have Peter and Harry going out to stop crime and whatnot, fighting alongside each other. Kind of similar to Spider-Man 3, but, except they're not fighting in this timeline, like the OG timeline. And then Peter would catch up with Otto, because he would break him out of prison, and they would actually build, like, a secret underground lair under New York City. He would catch up with Otto saying, Peter, Otto would say, "Peter, how are things?" And, Peter and Otto, would actually, become like, like a father and son type figure. Kind of similar to Spider-Man PS4, kind of like, that game's timeline, right? And, Peter would catch up with Aunt May and whatnot, and here's where things get interesting. So, in this universe, Sandman will be played by none other than John Cena. So, Sandman, kind of like the OG timeline, he would be running from the cops, he would fall into that vet, with the radioactive sand, get turned into Sandman, and MJ would run into Peter a few days later and tell Peter that they're hosting a parade sometime in the middle of New York City later that afternoon. And Harry would also say, "Peter, you want to come?" And Peter would say, "Sure, I'll come." And so, later, the party would happen, and MJ would give a speech, saying, "Spider-Man is a hero, he saved me, and, let's hear it from our one and only friendly neighborhood Spider-Man." So, Peter would swing in, high-fiving everyone, people would be cheering, "Spider-Man, Spider-Man," stuff like that. And Peter would hang upside down, and, the audience would, the people in the crowd would say, "Kiss him, kiss him." So, and Peter encourages MJ to do it, and, Peter says, "Go ahead, lay one on me." And MJ's like, "Really?" And Peter would say, "Yeah, they'll love it." And, Peter and MJ, have the classic upside down kiss, and then a sandstorm would suddenly appear. And this is where Sandman comes in his brute form and attacks the parade. Kind of similar, to the Spider-Man Far From Home Elemental. That's what his monster brute form would look like in this universe. So Peter and Sandman, are just battling it out, and they would actually head into the sewer, and Venom would help Peter. He would suit up into his Venom symbiote suit, and Peter would and Venom would say, "Let's get this guy," and Peter's like, "Yeah, let's get him." And so they would battle, kind of like like the OG timeline, but Peter would be trying to kill Flint Marko. He's just trying to defeat him in this timeline. So they fight near the train tracks, and then a train would come by, and it would knock both of them aside, and Peter would actually web up while Flint Marko would go falling into a puddle, and he would start melting, and Sandman would be like, "Oh my gosh, Spider-Man, it's Spider-Man, I'm getting fought by Spider-Man." And Sandman would be like, it would just be crazy, you know. And then Spider-Man notices a big giant water tank in the sewer, and he would break it, and Sandman would actually like disintegrate, and Peter would say, "That's a job well done," and police would be everywhere, saying, "Spider-Man, what happened to that guy?" And Spider-Man would say, "Don't worry, he's got everything under control. Things are going good and whatnot." So then Peter would meet Eddie Brock in this universe, because then Peter would apply for a job at the Daily Bugle, and Eddie Brock will be played by none other than Tom Hardy, right? So, in this universe, Peter and Eddie would actually be friends, and Peter would actually tell Eddie that he's Spider-Man, and Peter would say, "Eddie, I'm Spider-Man." And Eddie was like, "Oh my gosh, bro, you're freaking Spider-Man. Bro, how cool is that?" And Peter would actually show Venom to Eddie, and Eddie would be like, "Oh my gosh, what the heck is that thing, Pete?" And Peter would say, "This guy," and Venom would say, "We are Venom." And then Peter would actually say, "Venom, calm down, okay? He's just our friend, okay? He's not a threat." And Venom would say, "Okay." And then Eddie would say, "All right, Peter, I gotta go. See ya." And Peter would say, "All right, Eddie, have a nice time." And then sometime later, Sandman would erupt from the sewer. He would reform, and then he would see MJ, and MJ would say, "Oh my gosh, that's that Sandman guy from earlier." And Sandman would actually recognize her, and he would actually kidnap her. And here comes the OG timeline, right? So, in the final battle, it is going to take place on the Statue of Liberty this time, not on the construction site. So Peter would tell Harry, "Harry, she needs us, I need your help. I can't take him, not by myself." So they're pretty much, Harry would say, "All right, Pete, I'm right behind you." So Peter would suit up as Spider-Man, Harry would suit up as the Goblin, and Otto would actually see this on the news, and Otto would be like, "Oh my goodness, I've got to help Peter." So Otto would actually head to the construction site, right? And Eddie would be Eddie would be so concerned for Peter, saying, "Oh my gosh, Peter, he must be in danger." And Eddie would tell the cops, they gotta help Spider-Man take this guy down. And Peter and Harry and Otto would be fighting it out with Sandman. And Otto would be like, "We need to find water to take this guy down." So Peter thought of an idea. If he could somehow get Sandman into the water, he would melt. He would melt. So Peter would say, "All right, guys, try to get him into the water." And of course, Harry would be throwing his pumpkin bombs. Otto would be using his arms to help Peter propel himself and kick Sandman into the water. And Sandman would actually disintegrate, but then he would reemerge saying, "Spider-Man, I'm sorry for everything I've done." And Spider-Man would say, "All right, fine, I'll cut you some slack." And Venom would be like, "No, let's eat this guy." And Peter would say, "Venom, no." So then the cops, they would arrest Flint Marko, and throw him in prison. And Otto would say, "You're a good kid, Peter. You're a sweet boy." And Otto would leave, and Harry would be like, "Pete, this was a really good experience. We should do this again sometime." And Peter would they would both laugh and agree. And of course, Peter would save MJ, and they would kiss and whatnot. And everyone lives happily ever after. Eddie catches up with Peter, but the Venom symbiote then attaches itself to Eddie, and Peter's like, "Oh my gosh, Venom, you're such a big monster." But they wouldn't be fighting in this timeline. Venom would actually say, "Wow, this power, it is amazing." And Eddie would be like, "Oh my gosh, this is freaking awesome." And then a portal would open in New York City, and Eddie and Venom and Peter, would suit up. They would suit up, and out of the portal would be Moreland. And Moreland, he's just saying, he wants to take over the world, and he would actually fight it out with Peter and Eddie. But then 3 more portals open up, and it would be the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield and the original MCU Spider-Man, and then Tom Holland in the Ramiverse would say, "Oh my gosh, that's me," and they would all have a truce, and they would all team up to fight Moreland, and they would punch Moreland in the face, and that is going to be where we end the official trilogy for What If Tom Holland Was in the Ramiverse Part 5. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought about this. I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas. And guys, then again, I apologize for this taking forever to make, but I just needed a really good story. So yeah, anyway guys, I hope you did enjoy this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share this video with a friend, and turn on that post notification bell to be notified every time I upload a brand new video. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Ryan2005. And yeah, peace out. I love y'all, man, from the bottom of my heart, as always. And Merry Christmas. Peace!